Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 3CX Basic Technical Training webinar. I will be your presenter today. My name is Shane. We also have our product manager, Gabrielle, on the call, as well as Mario, who will assist to answer any questions that you guys might have in the Q&A section of this call that I do not get to in time. I'm going to give it a few more minutes for any stragglers to show up before we get started. All right, it's 5 minutes past 10. I think it is time for us to dive in. Just a friendly reminder, we do have a Q&A section on this webinar. You'll see it at the top of the presentation. Here you can ask any questions. If I do end up blazing past something just for some clarification, myself and Mario will try our best to answer as we go through this. I know the webinar has been scheduled to run for 2 hours. I don't foresee it taking that long, but yeah, buckle up and let's dive in, shall we? All right, so 3CX has a couple of options on hosting and actually getting access to the PBX. The first is something that 3CX themselves offer, and that is the 3CX free or SMB and hosted. So the 3CX free or SMB hosted is a native cloud instance that is shared on 3CX's side. They have a couple of servers across the world to host your 3CX instance. It is managed by them, so you won't be able to get root access, which we will discuss a little bit later. The hosting of the PBX is free, and of course, the installation of the PBX is handled for you as well. Bundled hosting and PBX would be for small to medium businesses. So multi-tenant has recently been launched. So we have yet to see whether they will be supporting multi-tenant on these kinds of deployments. And it is, of course, available globally with some caveats that I will cover in a second as well. Why would clients want to go for the free 3CX hosting? Well, it is easy to set up. So it's literally just you create your account on portal.3cx.com and you follow the prompts once you have created a system. The setup is extremely quick. It basically loads your initial configurations for you. 3CX in general is feature rich because you have the web apps, you have the mobile applications, um, you have built-in chats and Teams integration and so on, depending on the licensing that you're running as well. And the cloud-hosted 3CX also supports up to 20 users. Anything above that, then you would need to host the 3CX yourself. So the base license that you do get with a hosted 3CX will always be free. At the moment, it supports up to 10 users. You can load a single zip trunk. This is for the pre-licensing. You will be allowed a single ring group. Queuing is not supported on a free license. The live chat functionality is available, as well as WhatsApp integration, as well as video conferencing. So the same way that you will do video conferencing on Teams, for instance, you can do via 3CX as well. The 3CX SMB is a actual licensed version of the hosted by 3CX as the hosted by 3CX functionality. It allows for up to 20 users, so 20 extensions to be loaded onto the PBX. The licensing runs from 175 US dollars per year. The pricing is applicable in either euro, Great British pound, Australian dollars, and I think that's right. You will be allowed more than one DID if you do have the 3CX SMB licensing. You will also get the access to IVRs, also known as digital receptionists, where a voice prompt will tell you press 1 for sales, press 2 for technical support, press 3 for finance, and so on. The SMB does allow for the use of queuing as opposed to just ring groups, and of course, 3CX messaging, where you will be able to actually message each other internally using the web app or the mobile application. All right, things to remember about the 3CX free or SMB service. The first user created once you do set up the PBX will always be the system owner. This is the extension that will have access to setting up different extensions, the IVRs, the ring groups, the queues, and so on. The extension length is preset to 5 digits. You can set it down to 4 or 3 or sometimes even 2 digits, depending on how large you foresee your organization being. 3CX advised that you stick with their 3CX preferred subtrunk providers. These are providers that closely work with 3CX to ensure flawless integration with the PBX itself. There are about 2 or 3 in South Africa, all of which should be visible either from their website or when you do start setting up the subtrunk. And of course, because this system is hosted by 3CX, you will not have root access to the box. So you won't be able to SSH into the Linux instance where this 3CX is hosted on. This is all managed by 3CX. That includes networks, the packages. You won't be able to install something like VoIP tools or call cabinets or anything on a free instance. Not that it is advised by 3CX regardless. Right. Hosted by 3CX is the best way to deploy a dedicated 3CX. It is the most reliable as well, especially if they're jumping between versions. The configuration of the 3CX is fairly quick. The management is extremely simple. All you have to worry about is your actual 3CX interface. It is fully supported by 3CX as they do have access to the instance themselves if they need to check something themselves, if you're running into some trouble. Cost effective because you don't have to pay for hosting or hardware, and great value for all of the reasons listed above. 3CX is available in the Americas, Europe, Asia, and Australasia. So Australasia being, of course, Australia, New Zealand, and surrounding areas. They do say it's available in 50 plus countries, which makes sense considering that it encompasses all of these different continents. You can technically have an instance hosted of 3CX while you are in South Africa for South African clients. But this comes with the added effect that your traffic, your SIP traffic, is going to be leaving the country and coming back, which can cause poor quality issues and delays. It is not exactly advised for countries in Africa to use this particular service unless you can deal with that and instead host it yourselves, due to the fact that the traffic will then only be traveling locally and you will have greater poor quality. The 3CX applications with which you can interface with the platform is the web client. So to that degree, that is essentially just punching in the 3CX URL into your preferred browser, logging in, and from there you can make calls, you can manage your own extension depending on the permissions that the system owner has given you. The Progressive Web App, or PWA, is an extension that you can install on Chrome or Firefox, which essentially integrates 3CX into your browser itself. It is not then a web-only interface. You have your mobile applications, which is supported by Android and iOS. Huawei, they have announced that it will be supported or will be deployed on the Huawei store. I'm not entirely sure whether it has released yet, though. And then, of course, you have the Windows soft phone. So this is an actual application that you can install on your computer itself. So you don't necessarily always have to have the web client open. The features of the 3CX applications, the notable ones, there are a few more, is of course, you are able to see the presence of your team. So whether someone is on D&D or whether they're away or in a meeting. Users are able to set up call forwarding if the system owner allows it for themselves. So if someone's leaving their desk, they can set up a call forward to their cell phone. You have access to voicemails and greetings. Greetings naturally being like, hi, you've reached Shane. I'm not available at the moment. Please leave a message. Or you can just go for the standard 3CX voicemail greeting. You can also access your voicemails from the application by just literally clicking the call of whoever left a voicemail. You just click on that particular voicemail and it will play back the audio file for you. Talk and meet URLs are ways that people can directly get in touch with you via your extension if you do decide to share this with your customers, for instance, or your vendors. You can control IP phones, your IP phone from your extension. So if your IP phone has been provisioned by 3CX, you can control its D&D status and call forwarding status from there as well. The application also includes the functionality of video calls. As we said earlier, we can also do video conferencing from 3CX, as well as webinars, actually. And of course, the application comes built in with messaging, where you can actually message someone else's extension on your 3CX deployment. I will demonstrate that a little bit later. Right. The 3CX app naturally has complete telephony functionality. This is plainly due to the fact that 3CX is a PABX. It was initially built for SIP, for VoIP. You can schedule conferences in the same way that you can schedule conferences in Teams and Zoom. And of course, you can also receive notifications in terms of missed calls or messages that have come through to you. The web client and PWA, you will receive desktop notifications if you do allow your browser to send those notifications through. For mobile, you will have your standard push notifications. As everyone is aware, we are swimming in notifications these days. And for the soft phone, the actual application itself, the Windows application, will has a dialog box that will show you whether you have pending notifications or not. The welcome email. This is how users gain access to the PABX in the first place. It is sent automatically upon creation of the extension. Alternatively, if you reset an extension's password, they will receive a welcome email as well. So they can open up their emails, they can click on the forgot password link if they did forget their password or they did not receive the initial welcome email, and they can access the PABX after resetting their password. This can only be triggered by the administrator or system owner or the user themselves if they have access to the PABX, or if they struggle to log in, there is a forgot password option to log into the PABX and receive their welcome email. Right. I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown of the interface of the 3CX PABX, just explore some of the functionalities. Going to use our local one here. Where is my window? As you can see here, for a user, when you're logged in, you have your team available here. You can see who is available by whoever's extension is green, who is on Do Not Disturb by whoever's is red, and who is on a call by yellow. The chat functionality works similarly to a standard text chat. So for instance, if I want to open up a chat with Mario, I'll just start a chat, type in his name here, and just tell him, and he should receive a notification on his side that he has received a message. Next is a 3CX meet. And as you can see, similar to WhatsApp, 1 tick means the message has been delivered. 2 ticks means it has been read. Mario just saw my message. 3CX meet, here you can schedule meetings. You can decide whether it is a simple audio conference call. There we go. Here we have a reply, message read. You can schedule a video conference, or you can schedule a webinar where you will have attendees and you are the sole presenter, or you can set up other presenters. And then, of course, you can decide whether you want to do this conference now or later, and then you can schedule a date and time for how long you want the webinar to last. Calls will show your call history. I'm not going to open that now because, of course, there are cell phone and telephone numbers there. Your panel is used usually by managers so that they can see who is logged into their respective queues, so that they can also see, of course, who is currently on a call, who is not on a call, and whether some other diagnostics. Your contacts is your global phone book. So this will naturally be the numbers that have been saved onto the 3CX, users that have saved numbers, as well as user extensions and cell phone numbers. Voicemail is where you access your voicemails. When you click on voicemail, you will be given a list of all voicemails that were left to you. You can just click on the voicemail and it will dial the voicemail menu where you can listen to it. Recordings will be your voice recordings if you do have access to them, and you have the settings bar. The settings bar allows you to set up your call forwarding if you do so desire. You will be able to see your 3CX talk links, your chat histories, or your chat settings, audio and video settings. Let's do this. User cameras. I'm not going to allow that for now. But you can select which device we are using for the calls, whether it's the browser or the app, which device rings when a call comes through, and of course, what you use as your microphone and whether you want to use headset integration or not. Some headsets can be integrated. For instance, I'm currently using a WH62, I believe. Right now, it says no devices connected because my headset is integrated with my actual Windows application and not the web app. And then, of course, your voicemail greetings integration, many of you will not have to worry about. BLF is your busy lamp feature so that you can see the various statuses of your team. So whether someone is on Do Not Disturb or not. Moving on, the mobile application can be used to provision your mobile applications. So this can be found, so your QR code for your mobile application can be found in either the web client, PWA, or admin console. If I open up the 3CX again, you'll see here at the bottom left, we have a little button that says apps. If we click on it and we say we have an Android app or iOS app, it will show you the actual barcode that you can scan with your cell phone and then register to the 3CX. Right, moving along. Let's have a look at something here. The 3CX app, push application, sorry about that. 3CX applications use push notifications if you're on your cell phone. It uses native mobile operating system abilities. So this would naturally be the notifications that are used to send through notifications on either iOS, so Google notifications, on Android, Google notifications, or iOS. No manual configuration will be required for the applications to send notifications through to you. The application tends to hibernate in the background, which reduces or basically eliminates battery consumption entirely. and the application will only wait on incoming calls or chats to send you a notification or, of course, a ring to your device. It can be disabled per profile. You can disable notifications for certain users as a system owner as well. The flow for the notifications on either iOS or Android would be the call comes in to 3CX. 3CX sends it through to the vendor push service. So that would be either Android push, so Google, or iOS, to the mobile device, and of course, the application to start reading or display the message. Let me just do something here. Right. The 3CX app is always provisioned as dual location. This means that both your actual physical SIP phone can be provisioned as well as the mobile application. So if a call comes in, both your SIP phone and your cell phone will ring at the same time. Alternatively, your cell phone and your app. It depends on what you use. The mobile app can be used for external use. So when you are not on the same network as the 3CX or an approved network that you have set your 3CX up for, in this case, you would need to open up the NAT ports on the 3CX PBX, the tunnel port 5090, which is the which allows the connection to go through to the PBX, and the HTTPS port, which would be 443 on version 20 and 5001 if you upgraded from version 18 to version 20 or are still on version 18, which I hope you are not. On 3CX Free and SMB hosted, this is already taken care of, so you don't need to do any port forwarding if you do have a PBX that is hosted by 3CX. And of course, it will work perfectly fine on either 3G, 4G, 5G, or Wi-Fi. Do remember, so this port forwarding has just been mentioned. This essentially encourages you to have a look at how to configure your firewall when you do deploy 3CX. We will cover SBCs in a moment to kind of bypass any port forwarding that would have to happen where the phones are located. But where a PBX is deployed, there are firewall there is port forwarding that you will need to do in order for the PBX to function properly. The majority of this should be covered in the advanced course. We'll see. Right. 3CX has a number of IP phones that they have tested and then officially support. So in this case, if a phone is tested and supported by 3CX, so certain Yealink or Fanvil brands, among others, then they will be able to automatically provision to 3CX as well. This also means that if you do run into a certain anomalous issue, then 3CX can actually have a look at it because it is a supported phone. The phones have been fully tested, they are supported. They have templates built into the 3CX software to ensure that they can fully integrate with 3CX. The PBX can check whether the phones are on the newest released firmware because they're all supported, and you will receive a notification if they are not on the latest firmware. So this means when certain PBXs, when certain phones do receive new firmware updates, then 3CX will inform you that your phone is out of date. Zero touch and plug and play provisioning is essentially when you have punched the MAC address of your phone into the 3CX and the relevant ports are open, you just connect it, and the moment those phones receive an internet connection, they will pull their configuration from the 3CX, and you don't need to physically log into the device to configure it. Right, the provisioning of IP phones. The phones can be on the same network as 3CX, and the phones can be remote. A router phone must be the first phone to find if no dedicated SBC is on site. So what this essentially means is that if you have a user that has a, let's say, Yealink T48U, which can act as a router phone, it must be the first phone that is configured for a user, since more than one IP phone can be configured for a user on 3CX. When you do configure an IP phone and you want them to connect remotely, there is an option under this user over here in options, where you can enable to allow remote connections. This means that the IP phone does not have to be on the same network as the 3CX in order to be able to provision and register. The 3CX SBC establishes a secure connection between a network and the 3CX server in the cloud. So the SBC allows your phones to connect to the 3CX server in the cloud without needing to do port forwarding on site. However, I reiterate, where the 3CX is located, port forwarding will still have to be done for all of these features to work. The SBC is used to connect 3CX supported IP phones to the PABX, and audio is kept within the remote network. It is essentially encrypted. Call recording will be disabled in the way of packet sniffing, and phones connected to the same SBC will, of course, all register to the same 3CX or connect to the same 3CX instance. No firewall configuration is required at the remote network, so that would be the network where the phones are located, and multiple SBCs are supported on a single site. However, our advice is, let's say with certain router phones have a limitation of how many phones they can act as an SBC for. For the majority of them, it would be 10 to 20 phones. If you have more than 20 phones that are registering to a 3CX instance on site, our suggestion would be to get a dedicated SBC. So that would be a computer that you just flash with the actual SBC uh, ISO. The 3CX SBC is also completely free. If you have an account on portal.3cx.com, then you will be able to download the SBC installer or ISO directly from 3CX's website at no cost. So, router phones. Router phones are certain phones that have built-in SBC functionality. So they can act as both a telephone as well as an SBC or a session border controller. Usually they support only up to 10 phones. So if you have a small office that makes use of an SBC, then no additional hardware will be required. Just get the correct telephone that can act as an SBC. It helps you reduce cost. But do bear in mind that if that one telephone is switched off, then the other phones on the premises will lose connection to the 3CX until it is switched back on again. 3CX SBC hardware specifications, you can find it on the link that is listed on the screen, but of course the presentation will be shared afterwards as well. It can be configured as high availability. So this is if you have a dedicated SBC, such as a little Linux server or a Raspberry Pi. Other requirements would be to use a network interface card. So it needs to actually be plugged into the network. Do not use Wi-Fi for VoIP in general, but especially for your SBC. And disable unused adapters to reduce resource load. So disable adapters such as USB adapters or let's have a look here. HDMI adapters if you never intend on physically logging into it. But whatever you can disable, keep it disabled to reduce resource usage. RPS, or Remote Provisioning Service, is automatically triggered when provisioning phones. So an RPS essentially redirects the request for provisioning information from a certain URL towards your 3CX to push configuration through to the phone. It binds MAC addresses to the provisioning URL. The phone boots and will retrieve the URL. If a phone has not registered within 2 weeks, it will be unlisted by 3CX, which means that phone will no longer be bound to that extension. The phone will also be unlisted if the IP phone is deleted by the user or the user itself is deleted. This can be disabled on the 3CX side. Subtrunks. Subtrunks naturally provide access to the PSTN or public switch telephone network. So this means from my telephone number, I will be able to phone another company, such as the bank, for instance, on their telephone line. It transports via existing internet lines, so Ethernet, DSL, or fiber. No additional hardware is required. So usually these days, due to the fact that we're working with SIP trunks, you don't need a dedicated telephone line running into your premises. SIP also allows you to be provided with international numbers by certain SIP providers, which means if you have a client in the United States and you frequently do phone them, you can load an international number onto your 3CX, and when you do phone them, it is treated as a local call, which reduces international calling costs. Inbound, it shows a global presence to your customers. So if you have a lot of clients in a different country, you can give them you can list a international telephone number of that country on your website, for instance, and they will think that they are phoning a local company as opposed to the fact that that call is simply just being routed through to your 3CX itself. 3CX preferred and supported SIP trunks. These are the providers that I was speaking about earlier. These SIP trunks passed an interoperability test or an interop test. This is where ISPs and 3CX work closely together to ensure that the communications between them and the functionality and features work flawlessly. Preferred and supported can be used on the 3CX free or SMB, small to medium business instances, and it is supported with some limitations. That is listed on the 3CX blog itself. These SIP providers are the work with 3CX in ongoing testing on a regular basis to ensure that they are the preferred providers for 3CX, and it allows them to provide additional support. It gives a template in the 3CX software for how that SIP trunk registers on 3CX, which makes it much easier to configure and is fully supported by 3CX. So instead of having to putter about different proxy servers and so on, you just follow the on-screen prompts and you can get your SIP trunk registered. A DID. What is a DID? Additional numbers associated with an account. So you can have a single SIP trunk registered to your PABX. However, that one SIP trunk can act as 10 different telephone numbers. This means that if someone phones in on a number that ends with 82, but your main number is 40, then it will still route through to the number that ends with 40, but will be treated as a call that came in via a number that ends with 82. As an example, you can route incoming calls to a destination based on which one of the numbers were dialed, despite having only a single SIP registration open. So you can route the calls to either a user, a department, a system extension. System extensions are your ring groups and queues and IVRs. You can route it through straight to a voicemail. You can forward it to an outside number, a fax service, or a call flow app. Adding DIDs. To add a single, you can import DIDs via text file, or you can add them via the 3CX interface. The E164 format is preferred. As an example of E164, this is the processing to change the South African standard where our telephone numbers start with +2720. So instead of +2783, it will be 083. Using it, importing these numbers in this format makes it easier for 3CX to process them into actual telephone numbers that we as people understand a little bit better than international dialing codes. The star wildcard for DID is for DIDs and not the main trunk number. The star wildcard essentially means that it does not really look at anything that appears before the star. DIDs for the wildcard cannot be used as caller IDs because the PABX will not automatically fill in that information. It will only look at, when inbound, it will only look at the last few digits of your DID. Outbound rules. You can allow or restrict certain phoned numbers. So this means you can allow your company to only phone telephone numbers instead of cell phone numbers, for instance, or only local numbers versus international numbers, or only numbers of a certain length. If you want certain extensions to only be able to phone internally because they have no business phoning externally, then you can set up an outbound rule for those extensions. You can also select SIP trunks, extensions, and which SIP trunks they phone out on based on a certain criteria. For instance, a call that is placed to an international number will instead go through your international SIP trunk if you do have one on your PABX, or certain calls from certain departments are made via certain DIDs as opposed to the main trunk number. You can set a route in your outbound rules. So the PBX will first try to route a call via the route 1 or route 0, as it is in this example. If the route is busy, let's say you have a DID that only allows you to have three simultaneous calls at any given moment, then you can have a second DID or a second SIP trunk, which is essentially used as a failover. So the calls will still be able to go through if a single route is busy or down even. Emergency numbers. So 3CX has the ability to identify emergency numbers, and you can also configure emergency numbers in your PABX. So no matter what the routes are that you set up, let's say, for instance, you set up a route that only numbers can be dialed with the length of 10 digits, then you can make an exception for numbers of 3 digits or 4 digits, such as 112 or 911 or the fire brigade numbers or the police numbers or NCARES numbers. So you can make an exception for those. So people who are unable to phone out due to restrictions on their extensions will still be able to contact emergency services and bypass the routes that you have set up or the restrictions that you have set up. This, of course, you can also configure the emergency numbers that when they are phoned to send notifications to certain users via both email or via their apps. You can set up an outbound caller ID, provided that it has been made part of your actual SIP trunk via aliases, for instance, or DIDs. So an outbound caller ID can be set as a default for all users, usually the first one that has been configured on the PABX, or you can set up outbound caller IDs per user so that every single user has their own unique telephone number. And you can also set outbound caller IDs per outbound route. Let's say you have 3 different telephone numbers that can be phoned out on. You can still set that outbound caller ID to be the main telephone number. Of course, use the correct outbound caller ID format. This is dependent on provider between different providers. When you do an outbound caller ID, this is pushed by the SIP provider themselves. A call can be rejected if you are trying to push out an invalid caller ID or outbound caller ID. So do check with your provider what format your outbound caller IDs need to be in order for your calls not to be dropped because they are considered invalid. Right. We have a little bit of a duplicate here on the sheet. Let's just blaze past this messaging. Right, the messaging functionality in 3CX. There are different ways of interacting with customers. So you can have widgets on your website, which you integrate with 3CX. So you can use either SMS, Facebook, WhatsApp, or website live chat. All of these are easy and all of these are simply easy to set up and also use a single interface. You don't need separate interfaces for agents. Agents will be able to see whether a message has come through via WhatsApp, via Facebook, or via live chat. So all messages can be answered via one interface. This would be the web client or PWA mobile apps or the soft phone. Messages that come through to 3CX can either be sent to a user, a queue, a ring group, or a department. So if you guys have went onto some websites, you would see like a little WhatsApp widget in the corner. So if you send a WhatsApp to a company's telephone number, then it will push through to either their CRM or whatever other integration they're using. This is possible on 3CX as well. When you do add a widget to your website, users can chat with you directly. These messages can also be sent to a queue, which means any one of a group of people who are available first can snatch up the message and begin chatting with the prospective customer. The prerequisites would, of course, be any of the 3CX instances or licenses. On-premises or self-hosted, so this is if you have a hosted instance in the cloud on Azure or AWS, then you would need a valid SSL certificate for 3CX, as 3CX will not immediately generate that for you. You would need to have the HTTPS port of the PBX forwarded so that the messages can go through to the PABX, and you must not limit outbound traffic on that PABX. SMS functionality only works with supported providers. Not all providers cover the ability to send an SMS via a telephone number. The SMS functionality, of course, allows you to send and receive SMSs from the PABX. They are resolved from the PABX public or personal phone book. So if you have a client on your phone book and they send an SMS through, it does not show just as the number, but it will show their name instead. You can also send, yeah, incoming SMSs to predefined numbers. Numbers must be in the E164 format, so an SMS can only be sent from 3CX using +27 and then whatever the number you were trying to send a message to sans the 0. You can send and receive SMSs from all apps. Users are allowed to use SMS by default, so if you do not want certain users to have that functionality, you need to edit them and disable it. SMS is configured with provider's subtrunk page. So a guide is provided for each one of the supported providers on 3CX's blog. The live chat allows direct interaction with website visitors. This includes chats, voice calls, and video calls. You can customize the interface to a limited degree, and you can elevate chats for free to a telephone or a video call. So if it is initially a text conversation and you need to, for instance, video call the client to physically see what is wrong, let's say, for instance, someone has a burst pipe in their ceiling, then of course a company can switch to a video call to see exactly what the client has using their cell phone's camera, for instance. Your Facebook visitors can chat directly with your business. So if you have a verified Facebook business account, you can integrate the Facebook chat with 3CX as well, so that those messages go through to 3CX and you don't need to have someone logged into Facebook and monitoring that at any given time or at all times. WhatsApp integration is very much the same. Customers can send a message to your company's telephone number if it is enabled on your end, and you can interact with customers easily using WhatsApp. The requirement, of course, is a WhatsApp business account, and you need a unique number that is not used by any other WhatsApp accounts. So it needs to be a dedicated number or a dedicated WhatsApp account for the messaging functionality on 3CX. Messaging queues. So a manager of a department, and departments will be covered in the advanced training, I believe. A manager of a department can monitor agents' responses. So this is, of course, what the users said to a customer and also how long their response times are. And a manager can also assign ownership of a particular message thread to different users. So you can either do this automatically. The first person to respond takes ownership of the chat and then they are locked into that chat, or manually a manager can take over a chat, rip it away from an agent and take over it instead. If things get a little bit heated, for instance. And then a manager can also transfer the chat to another user. Live chat, offline messages. So if you or your system is offline, then the live chat will essentially be placed into a queue to check either whether anyone else in the queue is available or to leave it until the next day. Right, and we are at the Q&A section of our webinar. So any questions, you can pop it into the Q&A section and we will be happy to answer. Are you able to integrate a web chatbot into 3CX? That is actually a fairly good question. I do know that you. That's a good question. Mario, do you know if we can integrate a web chatbot into 3CX? I do know that we can do direct messaging using 3CX's widget, but a web chatbot is another thing.
I'm
I
actually
suppose,
checking it quickly.
yeah.
So apparently, according to 3CX, the live chatbot is a feature they are looking at the moment. We're just not sure if it is enabled fully yet.
Hmm. It would take quite a bit of finagling to get it to work, and it probably would not work well or be supported by 3CX. But yeah, if it is something that they are currently looking at, then I would keep an eye on all of the new releases to see what they have up and coming. I would not be surprised if we get chatbot functionality.
Okay, yeah. So they are mentioning here note in built-in chatbot functionality as of yet.
Hmm. It's a popular request, so it's possible they're looking into it.
What they also say is you can look at third-party chatbot platforms to integrate.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to give it a few more minutes before we sign off, but please don't hesitate to ask some questions. We're more than happy to answer. Right. If there are no further questions or any thing else to add to this webinar, I'm going to close it off now. Thank you all for joining. On Friday, we will be having the advanced training, which Mario will be presenting to us. So keep your eyes peeled. It's going to be fairly interesting. The advanced training covers the topics that I have discussed today in a little bit more depth. Can you share the presentation, Tokozani? Yes, the presentation can be shared. It will either be made available via Gabrielle or our marketing department. So just keep your eyes peeled on either this chat or any email notifications from Knowledge in the next few days. I do want to remind everyone this is a supplementary course to the actual content of 3CX's exams as well. These are supposed to help guide you towards doing some research on your basic certification and where you can find the answers. There are some links in this presentation. That is why we do share it at the end of the day. Once you do once you do go through the 3CX basic certification test, the links available in this slide should help you pass. In this slideshow, should help you pass. Right, everyone. Thank you for joining. And once again, keep your eyes peeled on Friday. Let me have a look at my calendar here. On Friday at the same time, at 10 o'clock, we will be going through the advanced training for 3CX, which will cover a broader range of topics at a at more in more depth, basically, as well as more information regarding the administration of 3CX as opposed to the features of 3CX and their limitations. Thank you for coming, Tokazani. I hope you guys have an awesome day further. We'll see you on Friday. Cheers.